Newspaper. I read that and I was just telling Ryan that's still the deal. I read that, but I have to come out and have to see what's going on.
He said he added stuff from like previous presentations because he's had multiple other than that.
Yes.
I guess we'll ever see what's new.
Well, I'm hoping for the future in journalism. You're really good at it. Really good at it. Thanks for doing that article. Maybe writing some more tonight. Good.
I'm also filming today.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to be looking for it, okay?
I saw the article.
Thank you.
It's a presentation.
At the historical museum.
Yeah.
to the city, well, residents, your says, residents of this area, and especially West Covina, because that's our asset. And probably many of you are from that city. So anyway, it's education only. It is about past, present, and the future. And you will learn so much tonight that will give you things to think about for improving the quality of our life here and helping us to preserve our health. Those are the two things that we are most involved in. And I am going to, Brian's here.
Right here.
Brian is here, he is ready.
I am ready. Got a little handout coming out for you that you can refer to. First of all, thank you all for coming out. I will do my very best to make this work for your time. I am Brian Jobst. My wife and I are 29-year residents of West Covina. You don't know my wife or haven't met her. She's right there in the blue. That's and as Carolyn said, we're going to talk about BKK, past, present, future opportunities and risks. And curious to me moving around a bit because when I talk, I move. If I stop moving, stop talking. Just real briefly about this presentation. First of all, the presentation itself, the information that you're going to see relies primarily on 3 different sources of information. The first one is the regulatory agencies that are responsible for BKK. And we'll talk about some of those tonight because they're doing a very, very good job of keeping us safe. And if something happens at BKK in the future, in terms of development, they're going to have a very big role. The second one, City of West Covina, current information and archive information that I was able to obtain. A lot of it publicly available, some of it from the California Public Records Act. And then finally, previous litigation associated with BKK. There is an abundance of previous litigation. And some of that is very, very useful information, not from a legal perspective, but in terms of understanding what happened at BKK and why it happened. And then finally, just this last bit about this presentation, I'm a management consultant. And part of what I do in my practice is I will have clients that come to me and they ask me to do something called preliminary site assessments. So think about putting a power plant here or a water treatment plant here. They'll want to put something somewhere. And they'll ask me to do a site assessment, basically answering the question, is this particular project suitable for this site? So all I did was put the exact same techniques that I've been using for many years as a management consultant, and I just applied them to BKK. All right, let's get into it. And let's get this in our start to get this in. We won't spend a lot of time here. I think everyone's pretty much familiar with where BKK is at. BKK is basically smack dab in between the 10 and the 60 freeways. This is Azusa Avenue here. This is Amar Road. We got the boundary with Walnut right here. This is the Heights Shopping Center. So this is Target, PetSmart, and the Salvation Army store here. This is Home Depot, and then Big League Dreams. These are our softball fields and softball field and the soccer field that's there. This is Giambi Lane. Remember Giambi Lane. Giambi Lane is the single entrance and exit to this site, which is approximately 600 acres of land. We're going to peel this onion.
600 acres?
It's about 600 acres. Now, one last thing before we leave this slide. It's obvious what's around it. There's houses around it. Why is that important? Well, the reason that's important is because in 2016, late 2016, the city of West Covina updated its general plan. State law in California requires that every city have a general plan. And what a general plan is, it's called a general plan. You could actually call it a master plan in some ways. It lays out what the future of our city is going to look like. And one of the things our general plan says is it says one of our priorities is to preserve stable residential neighborhoods. So one would hope whatever happens at BKK will actually honor that priority. Okay, let's start peeling back the onion. Next one. We all use the same shorthand. I think mostly we all use the same shorthand. I just call it BKK. Some people just call it the landscape. Well, the first thing that you'll see, and you've gotten some of your handout in the lower right-hand corner, the first thing that you'll see is there's 2 landfills at BKK. It was never 1 landfill, it was 2 landfills. But this is a great way to conceptualize and think about what's up at BKK in terms of what's happening today. Okay, so the Class 3 landfill. The Class 3 landfill is mostly municipal trash. And we're going to talk more about that in a second. Right now, I'm just going to talk about these 3 tracks at the beginning. Then we have the Class 1 landfill. The Class 1 landfill is the hazardous toxic waste landfill. And then finally, the 3rd tract of land that makes it up is the land for sale. 122 acres of city-owned land that's for sale. So if you read in the newspaper about a company called Sintoli that's considering buying land, or the city trying to sell it, that is this odd geometric shape, this 122 acres of land. That's the land for sale. So,
Is it flat? Is it hilly?
I'll get into that though. Yeah, it's a good question. It's got some topography to it, and we'll be able to see it in some of the photographs. So that's the land for sale. A great way to conceptualize what's up there. 3 tracts of land. Last thing on this slide, the Class 1 and Class 3, where do those names come from? The California Department of Toxic Substance Control is responsible for landfills. One of the departments is responsible for landfills in California. The way they categorize landfills in California, they have Class 1s, they have Class 2s, they have Class 3s. So that's their terminology and nomenclature that I'm using. All right, next layer now. Hopefully this will be getting more interesting. We could spend a long time talking about BKK and its history. We could go through slide after slide. But 1963 is when BKK begins operating. That date is not a coincidence. Between 1950 and 1960, West Covina was the fastest growing city in the U.S. It grew 1,000%, from 5,000 to 50,000 residents. It was a building boom. And some of you in this room may have actually seen and been party to that. The end of 1960 comes along, and the building boom is over. Our city is looking at how are we going to make money. The building boom is over. We need to diversify. It can't be just homes. What are ways that we can make money? Now, West Covina wasn't alone in its search for revenue. There were 2 other parties that were key. One of them was Home Savings and Loan. Home Savings and Loan owned the land at BKK. The building boom had just passed. Home Savings and Loan still owned the land. Nobody wanted the land. They were looking for somebody to either sell the land to or lease the land to. And then finally, there was a 3rd party, BKK itself. Privately held, family-owned company, had landfills all over California, and they were looking for the opportunity to have additional landfills. It was lucrative. So 3 parties were looking for revenue, and that's ultimately how we ended up with BKK here in West Covina, and we ended up with it beginning in 1963. All right, first big lawsuit. First big lawsuit happened in 1980. That was filed by residents. It was filed against 2 parties, BKK, and it was also filed against W&A Builders. W&A Builders is the builder of homes, that is primarily south of the landfill near Amar Road. And we'll come back to that lawsuit in just a moment.
Was one of the parties the West Covina Homeowners Association?
I don't know. Sorry. 1984, from my perspective, was the beginning of the end. In the early 1980s, residents near the landfill were complaining about odors. They were complaining about health problems. State and local agencies started actively monitoring what was going on, not just outside of the homes, but inside of the homes. In July 1984, the monitors inside some of those homes registered methane gases that were explosive. You light a match, you're going to have a problem. More importantly, vinyl chloride. Vinyl chloride is a carcinogen. It's a known cancer-causing agent, and they found levels that were 100 times what was considered safe by the Environmental Protection Agency. There were evacuations. 21 families were evacuated. Some of them didn't make it back into their home for 5 or 6 months. Let's go back to that lawsuit. That 1980 lawsuit was finally settled in 1986. 1986, 508 residents shared a $43 million settlement. At the time, it was one of the largest settlements ever associated with a landfill in the United States. $43 million, that's real money today. This is back in 1986. 1996, so there were additional lawsuits, and then finally in 1996, BKK closes. Now, this is key. They'll bankrupt. Again, on your map, you've got the Class 3 landfill and the Class 1 landfill. BKK, though bankrupt, is still the owner of that land. And then finally, here's a point that we really come back to. My concern about the possibility of history repeating itself. We get into it a little bit, the financial situation that our city is in today. Certainly back in the early 1960s, revenue was the key driver. It's how we ended up with BKK, and we still have BKK today. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about these landfills. Okay. Now, we already know it's actually 2 landfills. And the Class 3 landfill, that's the one that's mostly municipal trash. 175 acres of land. Think about, if you're a homeowner, think about the home that you live in. You're on a 1/4 acre, you're on a 1/3 acre, or you're on a 1/2 acre. 175 acres is a lot of land. If you've ever been to a football game, college football game, professional football game, that's about 130 football fields. It is a lot of land. 20 million tons of trash. It's a big number, and we're going to come back to it in a few moments. Kind of conceptualize what we mean by 20 million tons of trash. The Class 1 landfill is mostly toxic hazardous waste. It's 195 acres. So at 195 acres, just basically add another 15 football fields. 3.4 million tons, that's mostly liquid. Again, another large number we'll come back to in just a moment, the way it's conceptualized. In reality, the precise boundaries of both landfills are unknown. Now, how can that be possible? You have a handout, you look in the lower right-hand corner, you see the 3 plots of land. Those are our best known approximate boundaries. Landfills today don't operate the way BKK operated. Today, at a landfill, when you go in, the truck has a digital manifest. What's on the truck, the houses, the businesses, everywhere that it came from. They drive up to the landfill, they GPS tag that load, and we know plus or minus 3 feet, north, south, east, and west, up and down, exactly where it went from the landfill. We didn't do that in landfills from 1963 to 1996. So those are our best known approximate boundaries. And we have an example of this. So that land that you saw, that odd geometric shape, which is the land that's for sale, that was buffer land. It was never used by landfill as far as we know. Well, the Heights Shopping Center is the same thing. It was buffer land, and as far as we know, it was never used as landfill. Except when they went to go build the Heights, they found some landfill. So, those are our best known approximate boundaries. Some of each in both. This landfill, the Class 3 landfill, is not exclusively trash. The Class 1 landfill is not exclusively hazardous waste. I'll talk about the Class 1 landfill first. Is everybody hearing me okay?
Yeah.
Fred, you good? Can you hear me? All right. Fred's my litmus test. He's at the back. So, there's some of both in each. The Class 1 landfill deliberately was hazardous waste along with trash. That's unheard of today. You don't mix trash and you don't mix hazardous waste. But back then, that was a practice that occurred. I'm not going to call it common, but it occurred. Then the Class 3 landfill, which is mostly municipal trash, well, because of what was in the Class 1 landfill, is mostly liquids. Some of that has migrated into the Class 3 landfill. So you have some of both in each. Now, this blows my mind. I'm not a landfill expert, but I've learned a lot about landfills along the way. BKK is up to 595 BD, a 60-story building. 60-story building. Imagine that for a moment. Now, if you think about West Covina, what's our tallest building in West Covina? It's on Barranca. It's on Barranca. It's Eastland Tower. and it's right next to IKEA. It's 165 feet tall. Imagine that tower for a moment and multiply it by 3.6. That is the depth of BKK at its deepest.
What it needs is a geological study of that area.
Now, one last thing before we leave this slide. Many of you are familiar with the term Superfund site. We have Superfund sites. In 1980, the U.S. Congress passed the Superfund Act. The Superfund Act was expressly passed by Congress to deal with landfills and other highly contaminated land. That was the purpose of it. And then they identified the sites that would be cleaned up. So, one of the sites that was considered for listing as a Superfund site was BKK. 3 main characteristics in order to be a Superfund site. You have to be big, you have to be bad, and here's the other third key. Nobody else will pay to deal with cleaning up the site except the U.S. taxpayer. That's how you end up being a Superfund site. BKK was examined. Criteria 1 was met. It was big, it was bad, but when it came for paying for dealing with BKK, they didn't have to come to you and me, the federal taxpayer. Because most of the companies, many if not most of the companies that dumped in BKK actually still exist today. Chevron, Mobil, Bayer, aerospace companies, automotive companies, Southern California Edison. The list goes on and on and on. And those are the parties today that are actually paying for the activities that keep BKK safe today. So that's the only reason we're not a Superfund site. Okay, oh, one last thing, Industry Hills. Industry Hills. Some people have pointed out to Industry Hills. That's the home, used to be the Industry Hills Sheraton. There's 2 golf courses up there. Now it's the Pacific Palms Resort. And some people have pointed out to that and said, let's do something like that. Let's do something like we did up at Industry Hills. Well, Industry Hills is a much more typical landfill in Southern California, at least as best that I can tell. It's 155 acres, a little bit big. When I read about landfills now in Southern California, the old closed landfills, 50 acres, 75 acres, 100 acres. So it's a little bit bigger. It's only got 3.6 million tons of trash in it, not 23.6, 23.4 million. The average depth is 35 feet, just 35. And again, it's trash and toxic waste. So when someone says to me, let's do what they did at Industry Hills, my response is, it's a different animal. What we have at BKK and what we have at Industry Hills, they share 2 things in common. They're both on Azusa and they're both called landfills. Other than that, they're completely different animals.
But you're saying the reason why BKK is not a Superfund site is because the larger, like Exxon and Chevron and Southern California Edison
They still pay. They still pay.
pay what?
They pay for their number of systems that are operating up there. So gas, yes, systems that are being used to keep that site safe. They're actually paying for those. We're on the 3rd consent decree up there, the 3rd legal settlement that those parties have to pay. And in fact, one of the parties, I find it interesting, one of the parties, one of the deepest pockets having to pay for BKK is Chase Bank. How did Chase Bank end up as one of the, they didn't dump in the dump. School on the land. Home savings and loan. Remember all the bank mergers? Decades of bank mergers? That liability went right along with it. 20 million tons, the class 3 landfill. If you're like me, 20 million tons, my upper limit, people heard me say it before, my upper limit is about 7 tons. I know that's a big male bull elephant. If you go over that, you got to give me some reference points. So here's one that I've come up with that I like. These are people here. This is one of the pyramids in Giza. These are people down here. Now, this is about 5 million tons. Imagine it's nothing but trash. Nothing but decomposing trash. Now multiply it by 4 and stick it in your ground.
Is that comparable to pyramids in Egypt?
Yes, this is one of the
This is actually a pyramid.
Yeah, this is one of the pyramids in Giza, Egypt.
So is that about 30 floors, 30 stories?
Man, I don't know. I know the volume. Sorry about that. All right, the class 1 landfill, 3.4 million tons of liquid. Again, some comparisons that we can talk about. One is bathtubs of water. 8.3 million bathtubs of water. Well, kind of put that in perspective. If you live to be 85 years old and you take one bath a day, every day until you're 85, you will have taken 31,000 baths. Just over. Nowhere near 8.3. 18.3. Another one, the Bellagio fountains in Las Vegas. If you've ever visited Las Vegas, you may have gone to Bellagio and seen the beautiful fountains out in front. 8.5 acre lake, beautiful fountains, dancing, choreographed lights and music and that sort of thing, or you may have seen it on TV. So picture that for a moment. Multiply it by 42. Now hold that thought. Multiply it by 42. But it's not the water in the fountain. Here's what's in the fountain. No. Here's what's in the fountain. Here's what's in the fountain. According to the EPA, this is just a partial list of what is in the Class 1 landfill. Acids, arsenic, cyanide, lead, mercury, asbestos, oil, gasoline, pesticides, vinyl chloride, acetone, hazardous waste, hazardous spill cleanups, PCBs. And this is just a partial list because I didn't want the print to get too small on it. So, the chemicals that are up there are serious chemicals. And finally, down here, Stringfellow acetate. I talked about that Superfund Act in 1980. One of the very first sites that was listed as a Superfund site was the Stringfellow acetates. It's just outside of Riverside, California. We share some history with Stringfellow. Part of the way to clean up of the Stringfellow acetates was dealt with. Some of that was brought to BKK. Okay, so one of the notions that you may have heard is up at BKK, we need to do something. It's just dirt. It's just dirt.
It's just a pile.
It's just a pile of rocks and dirt. So let's examine that notion for a moment. Well, first of all, here's what it looks like. These photographs were taken on April 11th, 2018. This is top of the Class 3 landfill. I took these photographs. I'm standing on city-owned land right here. Top of the Class 3 looking west. This is the Class 3 landfill. This is again the Class 3 looking towards the Class 1. And then finally, on your handout, this is in the upper right-hand corner. So if this looks like pretty good habitat,
It's land for sale.
it is. This is for the land for sale. This is the land for sale. This is in the upper right-hand corner of that land for sale. And what I'm going to do on these next slides, I'm not going to belabor this, but I do want to point out some of what is there in terms of habitat and wildlife and plant life. So these next three slides are just samples of photographs of what up there. So we've got mule deer, quite a few varieties of birds, great horned owl there, bobcat there. This is the check spot butterfly. It's actually an endangered butterfly. Something in that area.
There used to be deer.
Yeah,
There are.
there's a
There are.
mule deer.
Right there, mule deer. They're still there.
On the road all the time.
They're still there. When I can, I hike up there and I still see the deer. Other wildlife. So we've got California quail. The gray fox is up there. 3 or 4 species of snake. Coyote, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And then native California vegetation as well. So we have protected oaks in some areas up there. California buckwheat. This is protected black walnut, native to California, and some lemonade berry. Now, you may have heard that there's some endangered species out there. And the one that's typically talked about is the California gnatcatcher. It's common to that type of land. It's called coastal sage scrub. Well, at the end of the day, previously what's been documented is actually 5 endangered species, 4 birds and 1 butterfly. But think about it. Think about that picture we saw at the beginning, and it showed all those homes on the outside. You just saw that 600-acre island of land. If it were just an island of land, you couldn't have all this water. It's actually part of a greater whole. And that's why you'll see 2 of the regulatory agencies that are involved up there are U.S. Fish and Wildlife and California. 1 entrance and exit to the site. Remember Geombi land? 600 acres. What are the 2 biggest natural disasters that we face repeatedly in Southern California? Fire and earthquake. What regulators are concerned about and other parties are concerned about is when land gets developed, how many points in and out do you have? So first responders can get in, and people can get out. On this land, there's one entrance and exit. Now, there's a possibility for a second entrance and exit, and that's along the border with Walnut. But today, there's just one entrance and exit to the side. On to Azusa Avenue. Remember I talked about the master plan in 2016, that master plan. One of the things that we did, the city did for that master plan is had a traffic study. The traffic study concluded the busiest street in West Covina is Azusa. No surprise if you've been on Azusa, or if you're like me, oh wait, Azusa. So, again, that's another characteristic that you've already dealing with the busiest street. And then the intersection of Azusa and Amart, that's one of the top 5 most congested. All right. We talked about widespread presence of residential neighborhoods, habitat, and wildlife, and multiple endangered species. So this is just a partial list, but you can see if you had me come in and do a suitability analysis to do something, I'd start giving my client a list like this, saying, think long and hard, think carefully. Obviously, any land you can develop with enough time, enough effort, and enough money. But in terms of the suitability analysis, this is a list of the sorts of things you come up with. But more importantly, let's see what another party came up with talking about this land. The land is for sale. You can't sell land for sale without an appraisal. City did an appraisal. They did it in December of 2016. The appraised value was $6.4 million. Think about that for a second. 122 acres for $6.4 million. That is inexpensive land. It was performed by the same appraisal company that the city regularly uses. It's one that a lot of municipalities uses. It's a reputable company. And here's what the appraiser said. In conclusion, in light of the physical characteristics of the subject site, those uses that are legally permissible and financially permissible, and the economic conditions in the immediate subject, general subject market area, the highest and best use of this site is to be left as open space. I did the underlining. That's not in the appraisal. I did the underlining. That was the city's appraiser's own conclusion of this land.
Does this land connect with Geometry Lane? Is this an island?
There is a road that the BKK folks use that after you get on Geometry Lane, you drive up the Big League Greens on your left, you're on a dirt road, and it comes over to the one. There's not an approved road, it's a dirt road. Okay, the 8 regulatory agencies. The 8 regulatory agencies, these are the 8. Now, in my work, I will frequently run into land where there's 2 or 3 or 4 regulators. Sometimes 1, but 2 or 3 or 4 is pretty typical. When you run into land and there's 8 regulators that are responsible, have responsibilities for that land, that raises a flag in terms of it being a very challenging site and one that, if it were to be developed, that really needs to be approached with caution. DTSC, California Department of Toxic Substance Control, they have primacy, so they're the lead dog, if you will, for the Class 1 landfill. Cal Recycle, they're the lead organization for the Class 3 landfill. But in fact, what occurs is all 8 of these organizations work together. So whenever there's going to be something done up there, or the monitoring data, everything that comes in, it's all shared amongst these parties. But these are the all right. This is just one example, one small example of what the regulators do. At the Heights Shopping Center, remember that was bufferland, that was a landfill, that was bufferland. And these are some of the requirements that the regulators impose. Here, this isn't PetSmart. It's a methane alarm. In case there's ever a problem, that alarm would go off and tells you what to do. Evacuate, call 911. I don't know if it's ever gone off. To my knowledge, it hasn't, but nevertheless, I mean, this is one of the features that's been put in there. Monitoring wells. If you go to Home Depot, if you go to Home Depot, probably you'll see me. I'm at this Home Depot 2 or 3 times a week. If you look down on the floor, every 75 or 100 feet, you'll see these monitoring wells in the ground. Periodically, people come in, specialists, they pop off the bolts, they take a water sample that goes off to a lab, and they're looking at what the groundwater looks like in terms of contamination that may have migrated from the Class 3 landfill towards the Heights Shopping Center. This is Home Depot again. This is Home Depot. These are vent pipes. These are vent pipes. They go from the foundation all the way up through the ceiling, and methane and any other gases that might have accumulated in the ground, going through the foundation, those are piped off, so they don't accumulate inside the building. And that's just a label. That's just a label with red labels over there. It tells you which methane don't.
So you said it was a buffer land, what does that mean?
Buffer land means it wasn't used as landfill specifically. So, for example, when you build a landfill, even when you build a landfill today, you might have a landfill that's 100 acres, but then you're going to put a buffer around it of 1,500 feet completely around it, where there's no homes, there's no nothing. It's just a space. It's a safety zone. That's what it is.
Well, there's a monitoring well on the Home Depot site, but the toxic pile is 360 degrees, and it needs monitoring wells all the way around.
There are 2,200 monitoring wells on site and off site. There's a lot. Like I said, the regulators are doing a lot of work. So I brought this slide back up just so we could look at it. We're going to talk just a little bit about Simpoli. So you may have heard there's a developer. The developer's called Simpoli. They have offices in Arcadia and Pasadena, and they have proposed buying that 122 acres, doing a development on, right now the concept is on all 3 parcels of land, all 3 tracts of land. And here's their concept. So again, to orient you, here's the Heights Shopping Center. Zeus is here, Amar is here. This is Big Big Dreams, this is Giambi Lane. So their concept is this will be the road coming in. The centerpiece of this development is right here. That is a 270-room hotel and 20,000 square foot conference room. This is a virtual reality park. Don't ask me what it is. Nobody's been able to explain it, but that's what it is. This here, this is 1,400 horse stalls for thoroughbred racehorses from Santa Anita Race Park. Yes, yes. These are racehorse training tracks. One dirt
And
one
that's
grass.
Galster Park right at the top.
Galster's right here. That's Galster. That's Galster Park.
Who's going on?
Pardon me?
Guys, who's right
Yeah, this is right here. This is their, this is the parking structure. This is an aerial adventure park where we have zip lines. And then in yellow and in green, these are proposed solar greenhouses, hydroponic greenhouses, so well, they wouldn't be planting in the ground, but hydroponic ones. And then they would have solar panels on top. And then finally, this is a police canine training center and a firefighting training center. So, when this came out, what I did the next day is I called the BTSC and I called the EPA and I said, talk to me about these, whether or not these are considered permanently habitable structures. In other words, the deed restrictions on those 122 acres of land, there's a deed restriction right now that says no permanently habitable structures. BTSC and EPA said, yes, all of those buildings are permanently habitable structures. Now, deed restrictions can be changed, but they're there for a reason. So, that's Simpoli's proposal as best we know it today, subject to change.
It looks like love now.
Yeah, all right. Simpoli, what they proposed, why it doesn't make sense to me, and I touched on this. The deed restrictions say no permanently habitable structures. A hotel is a permanently habitable structure. So is an employee dormitory. So is a canine police training center. Yes to all of them. Significant earthwork. You saw everything that was going on. That would require moving earth on landfills and land that is adjacent to landfills, full of what you saw earlier. That creates a potential public health risk. One entrance and exit will not be allowed. That's my opinion. My opinion is whatever you develop up there, you have to be very careful, because if you do something like Simpoli has proposed, I don't think you're going to be able to sell just having one.
You could call it paradise. It's one exit, one entrance. It's just like paradise.
Yeah. Yeah. Traffic and congestion consequences could be severe. Think about it for a moment. St. Pauli has told us that what you saw on that slide is going to be an international destination resort. How does it succeed? Visitors. How do they get there? Vans, cars, and buses. We also know from our own experience with our cell phone apps and our vehicle navigation apps, those are all set up to route us around congestion for the last possible moment. So, if there is congestion, it's going to keep you off of Azusa to the last possible moment. It's going to run you through Walnut. It's going to run you through neighborhoods in West Covina. That's what those applications are designed to do. So that's another concern. Financial burdens imposed by these 8 agencies. Those are the 8 regulatory agencies. The 8 regulatory agencies do not care if the land ever gets developed. They do not care if the developer makes a profit. That's not what they're about. They're about keeping us safe. So they impose restrictions. They impose, I showed you that one slide, just some of the things that hide us. They impose things that cost money in order to make sure whatever is developed is safe. Wildlife agencies, there's certain land up there that has already been designated as habitat to be preserved. There's certain land that's been designated up there for restoration. Their job is to designate more land for that. And also to create buffers. Again, we get into that concept of buffer. Part of what the wildlife agencies do is they say, okay, you're going to put a hotel here. I want a buffer of 1,000 feet between anything going on in your hotel and the nearest habitat. So that's another example. Horse racing. Horse racing, Hollywood Park, we know that racetrack is closed. Yeah, Hollywood Park is closed. Santa Anita already announced last year, they said, going into this racing season and next racing season, this will be a litmus test. This will be a litmus test, and if we don't have increased attendance, we're going to have to seriously look at how we're using the land. So that jury is still out. Likelihood of litigation is high. You draw your own opinion, but when I look at this, I say to myself, more likely than not, there'll probably be litigation. Yeah, good for attorneys. And neighboring cities, will they accept the consequences without financial gain? The classic example would be Walnut. So Walnut's going to be in the position, they're going to get the traffic, they're going to get some of the other potential adverse consequences, but they're not going to get any money out of it. So what will those cities do? Okay. We have heard no one talk about it. And these apply beyond St. Pauli, but I'm going to use St. Pauli as an example because they propose developing it there. I think all of us know what's going on in West Covina. In West Covina, we have very serious financial challenges. For this current fiscal year, we had to deal with a major deficit. City manager, city council got us to a point of a balanced budget. And ultimately, that resulted in terminating, laying off, which you're correct, 22 maintenance
We're flat road.
and Bill says we're flat broke. I'm not going to dispute that. So one of the notions that has come up is let's do something up at BKK. Let's do something quickly. In fact, the notions that have been floated to be direct is St. Pauli's going to save us from a timing perspective and a money perspective. Well, we already know that the next 2 to 4 years are going to be some of the most challenging for West Covina from a financial perspective. Let's talk about the timing for that. My opinion, 7 to 10 years to get something built up there. How do I come up with that? Well, first of all, St. Pauli said in November of 2017 in a city council meeting, it's going to take us 3 to 4 years to construct what it is that we've proposed. Before construction can begin, these are all the studies, these are all the analyses, these are all the permits, but it's not all of it. It's just a partial list of what has to be done. And we all live in California. We know in California when we've seen developments, the quick part is the construction part. It's everything that happens before there's construction. And I think that's going to take 4 to 6 years. So 4 to 6, plus there 3 to 4, you get to 7 to 10.
I think it'll take 14 to 16 years.
So let's go to two examples kind of that are real close to that. One is Porto's Bakery. Right over here in the Plaza Mall, we know we have Porto's Bakery coming in. Discussions with the city of West Covina for Portos began in 2010. Now, Portos is on track to open in early 2019. So, more than 8 years. There was some on-again, off-again discussion, but the point is, from the beginning to the end, it took over 8 years. Portos, it's a 21,000 square foot commercial building and cafe on land and zone already for commercial and retail. All the infrastructure was in place, all the gas, all the water, all the utilities, and there was no need for a full-blown environmental impact. Next one. 5 years ago, there's several condominiums that are planned on Pacific Lane. A representative for this developer came in to the city council meeting, a few city council meetings ago. And this developer was participating in a public hearing. And in that public hearing, he was hearing feedback from the city council members. And the city council members would tell him, do a little tweak here, do a little tweak here, if I'm your wage, do a little tweak here, do a little tweak there. And that builder's representative was very receptive to that. But he reminded the city council, I'm 5 years in, I don't even have plans yet. For 7 condominiums on a lot that's already zoned multi-family residential. So I think from a timing perspective, what's been proposed isn't going to save us. Now let's talk about from a money perspective. Symphobic, in that same meeting in November of 2017, Symphobic said it expects $3.6 to $4 million per year. If you want to look at these videos, by the way, are available on YouTube with the Wayne Cho is the CFO of Symphobic. Go to, I think it's November 17th. You might know the date. $3.6 to $4 million per year. Our city's budget is $120 million. 3.6 to $4 million per year, we're talking about a 3 to 4% bump in our budget. Now, I'm not sneezing at 3.6 to $4 million. That is real money. But 3 to 4%, if our city were giving out raises, that would probably cover raises for a year, at least on the basis of 20 million per year. Where does the money come from? Hotel occupancy tax, property tax, and sales tax. That's what Symphobic was talking about to get to that 3.6 to 4 million. The most lucrative of those streams is hotel occupancy tax. So hotel occupancy tax is the one form of tax that a city can get, and it goes 100% to them. Think about property tax for a second. We pay property taxes. People get pieces of it. All sorts of entities get pieces. 16 cents on the dollar finally for the city of West Covina. Hotel occupancy tax, all of it, 100% goes to the city. If the rooms are occupied. Symphobic has proposed a 270-room hotel. One of our councilmen has proposed a 400-room hotel. Back to that 2016 general plan. Another one of the analyses that was done by a company called HRA. They're an economic advisory research firm. Widely used all over Southern California. It's hard to find a city that doesn't use them. One of the areas of analysis that they looked at was hotels. And they came to the conclusion that there's demand for approximately 137 hotel rooms through 2035 in West Covina. That considers all the hotels in adjoining cities, ones that are in progress, ones presumed to be remodeled. So that's their estimate, 137.
I don't believe it.
Now, Starwood is the owner of the Plaza Mall. They've proposed a major redo of the mall. None of us have any of the details yet. But one of the things that they said in concept is that redo of the mall will include a hotel. If they put in a hotel and it's 137 rooms, that may soak up all the demand. And then finally, before I leave this one on money, think about for a moment how you pick a hotel. You pick your destination. I'm going to Niagara Falls, I'm going to the Grand Canyon, I'm going to Carlsbad, Cameras. I pick my destination and my attraction. And then I pick my hotel based on my budget and the amenities that I'm looking for. So the question becomes, if we built a hotel, what's the attraction that brings you in? What's going to bring you down?
Well, what's the business plan for the industry, the sheriff? Where do they get their?
Don't know, they're privately held, they won't talk to me. They'll try. Bond refinancing. Another one of the notions that you may have heard is if we quickly sell this 122 acres of city-owned land, we're going to go ahead and pay off the bonds associated with BKK. There was a golf course project that was planned up there. We spent money that was underwritten by bonds. The golf course didn't happen, but we're still paying off the bonds. So let's examine that notion for a moment. First of all, there's $24 million in bonds that was refinanced in September of 2018, which is a couple months ago. Absolutely the right thing for the city council to do. Interest rates are rising. They refinanced from variable rate bonds to fixed rate bonds. Cool, we're good. Now, the land is appraised at $6.3 million. The bonds associated with BKK, in that $24 million, it's $9.4 million. So we're $3 million short already, unless somebody's willing to pay $3 million more than that land was appraised for. And these bonds basically fall into two buckets. About half of the bonds mature in 2044, and they cannot be paid off early. Sell the land, can't pay off those bonds. They can't be paid off early.
These are municipal bonds?
These are munis. These are both munis, tax exempt and taxable. The other half of the bonds, taxable bonds, those mature in 2030. That point, 4.6 million, can be paid off early, so they are callable. But they include a make-whole provision, and I won't get into that. That just basically means there's various different ways to make sure that the investor is made whole in terms of what they committed to when they bought those products. So again, it's another notion that we're sort of examining that's been floated. Okay, it wouldn't be fair if I just stood up here and put concern after concern after concern out there, and I didn't provide some alternatives. And our group, which is the Global West Covina, has a couple of alternatives that we don't know if they're the right alternative, but we certainly want to share them for food for thought, so that if the city holds community meetings in the future and asks for your input, start thinking about things that, based on these characteristics of the land and what it is you would like to see. Here's our priorities. We think, number one, whatever gets developed up there, the number one priority should be protecting public health. And you can see why. Number two, it should create a better quality of life. It should have things that we want up there as residents that are desirable. Whether we go up there ourselves or with guests, but we want a better quality of life. Finally, third, and this is important, development and redevelopment are the lifeblood of any city. There's no one in our group that is anti-development. We get that. We get that. So whatever goes up there, that's a good third priority, is producing meaningful income. And then finally, ideally, whatever got developed up there would avoid the adverse impacts, the potential adverse impacts that some polling plans propose. Things like health risks, traffic congestion, or emergency access. So let's talk specific instances.
You put that 1,400 horses. There's still no consideration of bringing that over. Is there from the other ones? They're going to have house 1,400 horses on that property.
Well, so far it's still the proposal that's out there. They haven't changed it.
What?
They haven't changed it officially. The proposal is still for 1,400 stalls, but they're over their resources.
Well, they're going to have horses on top of each other, or what?
No, they're in stalls. They're apparently proposed beautiful stalls. Here's another option, which is a different process, a different way of doing this. The process that we're in right now is a one developer process. So, the city of West Covina has in place an exclusive negotiation agreement. Shorthand, it's called an ENA. It's an exclusive negotiation agreement with Symposia. Now, what that means is there's no open competition. If another developer wants to come in and has an alternative one, what the city has to do is, we have an exclusive negotiation agreement with Symposia. So,
What do they have?
They're afraid of other people's
What
ideas.
would allow them to have that?
that's a decision that the city made. I will tell you what I tell my clients. Get an ENA. get an exclusive negotiation agreement and block everybody out. That's what they're made to do. Now, that's why I'm proposing, because this is my city. Seek public input. First thing you do is seek public input. You have community meetings or web-based or Discover Magazine, and you seek public input and find out what it is you do and don't want up at BKK. We're not going to find unanimity of opinion. We're going to differ. But you're going to see patterns. You're going to see patterns in what the public wants.
Well, CEQA is a disclosure process, and public input is California Environmental Quality Act. So, I mean, this is just gonna, lead to a legal nightmare.
I think the path we're on, issue an RFP. Then you issue a request for proposal. The request for proposal, we see a number of other cities have done this for landfill sites throughout the United States. In your RFP, you tell developers and anybody that might be interested, this is the results of our public input. These are the constraints of the land. These are some of our desired outcomes. Give us proposals. Let's get proposals from multiple different parties about what it is that they might want to do up there. I'm not working with any of those parties. That's not why I'm doing this stuff. That's been floated. We have plenty of time. This is going to take some additional time. But it's about doing it right, not doing it quickly. Now, here's another approach that we can consider. It's the park and solar PV. So think again about those 3 tracts of land that we've got. The 122 acres of city-owned land and sale, that are for sale, would be bought by the Nature Conservancy, the Trust for Public Land. There's dozens of different conservation interests out there. They would give the city a check for $6.4 million. That park is a public asset then, but not a drain on the city. They would establish a park, designated areas for habitat restoration and preservation. They would put in trails, connect to existing trails to Jobst, existing trails to Walnut. They'd establish soccer fields and other recreational amenities based on feedback from the community. City would not be responsible for the property financially or legally going forward in the future. This is a very, very common model, an increasingly common model in the United States, where conservation interests will come in and it becomes complicated dealing with the city. They just buy land. They just buy the land and then they're responsible. So they don't have to worry about it as cities' finances go up and down and whatever else might go on from a political perspective. Yes?
So have those conservation interests shown interest in this property?
There is one. I have talked to several. There is one. The Trust for Public Land has shown interest.
Okay, typically, is that difficult to get you to typically jump on this type of thing when it's available?
Put yourself in the shoes of the Trust for Public Land.
Yeah, well, I would do it,
But there's an exclusive negotiation advantage. There's a big, big wall that's right there. But they are definitely potentially honest.
How could you dismantle the wall?
You let the ENA, the exclusive negotiation agreement, expires on December 14th, 2018. Let it die. So here's a little bit more on that park and solar.
Another question.
Yeah.
So we've been told that we have to make a decision about this property because it's going to go to the state. It's going to be taken over.
Well, it's an old rumor that was out there. So this land that is city-owned land, let's go back to the beginning. It was owned by BKK as buffer land. Then it was owned by the redevelopment agency of the city of West Covina. Remember when we have redevelopment agencies? We had our state financial crisis and redevelopment agencies were basically disassembled. That land then moved to the successor agency of the redevelopment agency of the city of West Covina. And then in the last year, it was actually purchased by the city of West Covina from the successor agency. And what you're referring to, that clock that was ticking, all that land that was tied up in redevelopment agencies had a timing component associated with it. And that clock was ticking. You needed to do something with that land or you were going to have a problem with the state. That clock stopped ticking when it became city. Now just another little on the solar. When I talk about the 122 acres that are for sale, that took care of one of the 3 tracts of land. You got 2 other ones. So, another possibility is lots of landfills have been used for solar PV, solar photovoltaic. It would only be, in our concept, and just food for thought, it would be only on the elevated top decks and not on the slopes of the landfill. So imagine when you're driving by, as you said, and you see the landfills and you're looking up and they're literally hundreds of feet above them. So you can't see the solar panels. So there's no concerns about aesthetics. Again, only the Class 3 landfill would be used initially because the Class 1 DTSC is doing studies currently about improvements they're considering doing to the systems that are there. Oops, sorry about that. Could be the PV field, the solar, could be privately owned, could be publicly owned, or a combination of both. It does create ongoing revenue streams for the city. Zero penetration. You don't dig up the earth. This is an actual zero penetration. This is the backside of the solar panel at the landfill. These containers are full of cement, and they just rest on the ground. So you're not mucking around, moving around soil on or adjacent to the landfill. It would stand winds up to 110, and it would be completely compatible with the park.
It could be a nightmare for the aesthetics for the people, the neighbors, they don't want to look at a solar thing.
That's why we're talking about the top. That's why we're talking about the top and not the slopes.
You might be able to see them for miles.
There you go.
I don't know, I don't live there, so
Yes.
it's not my problem.
If the land is sold to one of these conservation
Interesting.
areas, does the city get property taxes from that?
Yes. 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 Yep, that's one of the revenue streams. Here are examples of closed landfills. Go on the internet, you'll find list after list of closed landfills. And then real quickly, I want to wind up here. This is Guido's Construction, no joke, this is Guido's Construction Company in San Antonio, Texas. Some people have said, let's put West Covina on the map with this new development. My thought, let's spell out West Covina solar panels. So as people come in LAX, they circle around Ontario, they see it on the map. Okay, real quickly, because I want to wrap up. Am I safe? I am not a landfill expert. I am not a regulator. As far as I can tell, we are safe. My focus is a forward-looking focus in terms of these sorts of things. And number one is making sure that residents are informed, that we protect public health, we analyze and solicit options, and we ultimately do something that's suitable for that site. Okay? Coming full circle, we talked about 1963, and we ended up with BKK because there was a very, very keen focus on the money. Today, there's a very, very keen focus on the money. This is Einstein's quote. Insanity is repeating the same mistakes and expecting different results. So let's not go there. Finally, your help is needed. And don't worry, no checkbooks, no credit cards, no wallets, no purses. That's not the help. The help that we need, first of all, feel free to go to our website. You have this on your handout. Sign up for periodic updates. We send an email out once every month or once every 2 weeks. Just let you
Is your PowerPoint on the website?
Not yet. Please, if you do nothing else, contact the city council and contact senior city staff. And you've got their contact information on a sheet of paper. Here's our proposed message for you to consider letting them know. And we're fortunate in West Covina. I think we're fortunate. I've worked with a lot of different city councils, state agencies. We do have a city council. We do have city staff that are interested in listening to what it is you have to say. Here's our suggested message. Number one, the path we're currently on with BKK is unacceptable. The one developer locked-in approach is not one that works for us. Number two, do not have an exclusive negotiation agreement. Not with Holding, not with any party. Nobody. Free and open competition. Number two, do not sell any of that 122 acres until we have actually solicited and analyzed options that might be most suitable for that land. Perform city-sponsored outreach. Have community meetings in which they're asking us what we do and don't want with BKK. And then finally, these priorities. Lastly, Tell others about the BKK situation. If you want us to come to the Kiwanis Club, the Rotary Club, Homeowners Association, just let us know. And there's a contact information which you've already got. And then finally, happy holidays.
Get involved in this project, start 10 years, 5 years.
I think 7. I think 7 to 10.
That's a real involved project.
Yes. Yes.
I believe there's probably drinking water wells.
The question goes down to the question that goes down to frequently get asked is where is the nearest drinking water well? The nearest drinking water well is 1.7 miles away. It's not close. It's not close. Yes.
I believe you said that solar could be put on the last 3 Before I came, I looked up just to see how many homes the solar farms are helping out.
Yeah.
And it was, I think the number was about for every 25 acres, it would power about 1,600 homes.
Yeah.
So if you have enough land, you could power most of West Covina.
Absolutely.
Number one, and number two is the technology getting there. You could go even further.
Yeah. The amount of you couldn't be on point. The amount of available land just on the top deck of the class 3 landfill, and then you add in the class 1 eventually, you're talking about a huge amount of generation potential.
Right, and that 25 acres, I can't remember the name of the city, but the 25 acres that powered about 1,600 homes also saved the city about $100,000.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
You put in there 1,600
Anyone else? Yes.
But it's unbelievable. When that souls went in there, and I had to read through the year constantly, when the windshield opened it, it was really bad.
It's not that.
You can smell it. And so many things have happened. I just found out tonight, I didn't know which one come first. Got to jump on the house next to it, or whatever come first, or second, and show me what happened.
Yeah. The first one was a class 1. The first one was a hazardous waste landfill mixed with trash.
If I had a cell phone those days, I can tell you, when on East Avenue, I called the phone, that was not dripping, he was leaking, wet, green liquid, right down.
I lived on West Avenue when I was there.
Part of the time didn't allow it here. When you go through the old BKK, the depositions, there's deposition after deposition about spill that occurred and what it took to clean up spills on the system. Because when we talk about the waste that went up there, that went up there in tanker trucks that sometimes leave.
But in 1958, that landfill was there, we were on Cruise Avenue, he was at the church in there, and there, but he got your garage, he was down there, that's one thing. Cruise Avenue didn't even go down, it was ran into Frank Speed and stopped.
So, you mentioned 3.4 million tons of liquid waste.
Yes.
Liquids will flow underground. It's been 22 years, 1.7 miles for 3.4 million tons of liquid,
What does that have to do with it?
if there's a geological study, you could find out where the liquid is likely to.
Well,
that's never been done.
A lot of what has been done is they actually have a well. They actually have wells that are dug in that actually pump up that liquid so it doesn't
You
mine.
mentioned 2,200.
Those are the monitoring wells. There are wells that are extraction wells, so there are wells that are on the landfill site that extract out. When trash decomposes, it's liquid, it's called leachate. When these liquids in the hazardous waste landfill migrate out to the bottom, it's also called leachate. They have extraction wells that are on the landfills that suck that up, they send it over to a processing plant, then it's mixed with city water in an 8 to 10 to 1 dilution ratio, and it's put back in the landfill. So you have a continuous loop. So the way that they're making sure that you don't have that liquid migrate is they actually have these extraction wells that are taking it out of the ground.
Yeah, now you take the BKK, you take the homes that are down there off of Amar,
Right.
you have 4 plexes, and you have about 250 homes. Okay, the vacant land was there, over to the other side now. Was that former landfill at one time, with waste dump and all that area?
To my knowledge, it was. To my knowledge, that was never part of it.
That was never part of BKK? But where they dumped it? Where's all the stuff they dumped?
You and I have to sit down with a map, because if I think I know the area that you're talking about, if you got it right, I don't think that was used as a map.
And there's a lot of vacant land from there, and that's where you're expecting to eventually close the build homes, is that right?
No, nobody's proposing homes. No, nobody's proposing homes. Yes, sir, Fred.
When you go to Home Depot,
Yes, sir.
have you ever asked the employees what they've been told, what not to do or to do, or maybe what not to do when they're at work? Have you talked to them?
One employee I ran into was a very brief conversation. I needed some new photographs of the vent piping. So when you got a guy walking around with a tourist type camera, I couldn't use my cell phone because I couldn't get a clear enough picture. So I'm walking around with a tourist camera in Home Depot, taking photographs, and an employee was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm photographing the vent pipes." And he talked about when he was an employee, they had given him some instruction about the methane monitoring, about the vapor barriers, about the venting. So we didn't get into any of the details, but he did say it was part of his introductory training at Home Depot. So
If you get a chance, ask what have they been told in regards to
Okay.
things not to do.
okay. Don't take a break and light up near one of the vent pipes, or you'll get really lit up. Anyone else? Yes, Phil.
Yeah, the system, the solar panels that you showed, supported by cement
Yeah.
supports, has there been any problem with the weight of the cement sinking into the ground?
One of the things that the companies that do this specialize in landfills. So, for example, one of those you saw on the list is they do put some supplementary clay or what have you on top of it in order to deal with sediment. The other thing that they do is they don't connect. If you look at some of the engineering of it, they don't connect a series of maybe 8 panels, and then there'll be a flexible joint, and then another 8 panels and a flexible joint. So if you do have some settling that goes on, that you can deal with it. But the details of it, I really have.
One of the big problems with this whole proposal is there's one ingress and egress site. That was the problem in Paradise. There was only one way in and one way out. They're planning on putting in a big development in, and the neighborhood can't tolerate it. The one ingress and egress site.
Anyone else? Anything else? Really appreciate your time. Thank you.